The Philippines today faces an unseen invasion, not of soldiers or warships, but of influence and power flowing in without a single shot fired. From flashy investments in shiny new bridges to the subtle sway of pop culture and media, various nations are expanding their footprint across the archipelago's economy, society, and strategic sectors. This documentary-style exposé unravels how 10 countries have been quietly taking over the Philippines in the past 5 years through economic deals, diplomatic partnerships, cultural exports, and migration flows. The story is one of soft power and strategic leverage, often unfolding behind closed doors or disguised as friendly cooperation, yet amounting to an invisible invasion that is reshaping the Philippines' future. In this journey, we will count down 10 nations, excluding India by design, that have entrenched themselves deeply in the Philippines without any warfare. Each segment blends factual analysis with cinematic storytelling, revealing how each country exerts influence via investments and trade, military partnerships of the non-aggressive kind, media and culture, diplomatic ties, immigration and labor, education and technology. All information is drawn from verified sources, official statements, government data, and reputable outlets like Reuters, Al Jazeera, BBC, The Diplomat, and Nikkei Asia. No side is vilified or glorified. Our tone remains neutral and professional, allowing you to weigh the evidence. As the tale unfolds, you'll see how global powers and neighbors alike are shaping the Philippine landscape in visible and invisible ways, truly delivering on the curiosity sparked by the invisible invasion. Let's begin the countdown of countries quietly making their mark on the Pearl of the Orient Seas. Number 10. Russia. Russia's subtle incursion into the Philippines comes not with tanks, but with diplomatic charm and promised partnerships. Under former President Rodrigo Duterte, Manila pursued a pivot to Moscow, warming ties that had long been minimal. In October 2020, Russian Ambassador Igor Kovayev lauded the relationship as at its highest level in history, crediting Duterte's independent foreign policy for opening absolutely new horizons. Russia positioned itself as a new reliable partner, ready to befriend the Philippines without disrupting Manila's Western alliances. This courtship translated into high-profile visits. Duterte traveled to Moscow twice, and a flurry of agreements on defense, energy, and cultural exchanges. Russian naval ships made goodwill stops in Manila Bay, and talks began on arms sales and joint exercises. One concrete example was a 12.7 billion peso $249 million deal for 16 Russian Mi-17 military transport helicopters inked in late 2021. It symbolized Moscow's deeper play for influence, equipping the Philippine military and reducing Manila's reliance on U.S. hardware. But the romance hit reality when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, triggering global sanctions. Fearing fallout, the Philippines scrapped the helicopter contract in August 2022. This cancellation is precipitated mainly by the war in Ukraine, Philippine Ambassador Jose Romualdez explained, noting Manila sought to avoid U.S. sanctions. The Philippines is now trying to recover a $38 million down payment. Despite this setback, Russia's overtures left an imprint. It has donated Kalashnikov rifles and trucks to the Philippine police, explored nuclear energy cooperation, and cultivated goodwill through scholarships and cultural events. While trade remains modest, Russia isn't a top 10 trading partner. Moscow's diplomatic and defense forays have quietly inserted it into the Philippine equation. The Russian invasion is thus an invisible one, charming and cajoling rather than coercing, as the Kremlin tests how far its newfound friendship with Manila can go without firing a shot. Number 9. Australia. Australia's influence in the Philippines has grown steadily and quietly, underpinned by mateship in diplomacy and increasingly robust defense ties. In fact, Manila and Canberra elevated their relations to a strategic partnership in 2023, a strong signal of long-term commitment. Australian Defence Minister Richard Marles highlighted his country's vested interest in regional stability, stating on August 25, 2023, that Australia has a security interest in the South China Sea and will work more closely with the Philippines on joint patrols. He said this while observing 2,000 Australian and Philippine troops, with U.S. Marines, storm a beach in amphibious exercise Alon, 2023. It was a cinematic display of partnership. Australian Navy ships alongside Philippine vessels, soldiers from both nations and allies practicing retaking an island, a scenario clearly aimed at boosting the Philippines' confidence amid maritime tensions. Beyond war games, Australia has become a key development ally. It has provided extensive aid for Philippine education, governance, and disaster relief. During the 2017 Marawi siege by insurgents, Australia lent critical surveillance support and training to Philippine forces, solidifying its role as a security partner without engaging in combat. A visiting forces agreement signed in 2007, enforced in 2012, enables Australian troops to regularly train on Philippine soil, a pact quietly maintained over the years. Diplomatically, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has emphasized shared democratic values and even invoked a sense of bayanihan, community spirit, between Filipinos and Aussies. People-to-people ties are warm. Over 300,000 Filipinos have migrated to Australia and built communities there. According to Australia's Department of Home Affairs, as of June 2023, about 361,000 Filipino-born people live in Australia, a 65% jump from a decade earlier. They serve as a cultural and economic bridge, from Filipino nurses in Sydney hospitals to students at Australian universities. Economically, Australia is a quieter player, but not absent. Two-way trade of goods and services was valued around 5.5 billion Australian dollars in 2022. Australian mining firms have interests in the Philippines, and Australian banks and companies operate in the country with little fanfare. As a middle power neighbor, Australia's invisible invasion is one of friendship and support. It strengthens Philippine defense, aids its development, receives its migrants, and coordinates in regional forums, all without any conflict, but with an eye towards a free and stable Indo-Pacific, as Marles put it. Number 8. United Arab Emirates. The United Arab Emirates, UAE, though thousands of miles away, has steadily woven itself into the Philippines' economic and human fabric. This oil-rich Gulf state's influence is most visible in the flow of people and money. The UAE hosts an estimated 700,000 Filipino expatriates, from professionals in Dubai's corporations to service workers in Abu Dhabi. They constitute roughly 6 to 7% of the UAE's population, forming one of the largest expat communities there. These Filipinos send home significant remittances, about $2.2 billion in 2024, according to preliminary data, injecting lifeblood into the Philippine economy. The reliance goes both ways. The UAE gains a hard-working labor force, while many Filipino families depend on income earned in Emirates' megacities. Economically, the United Arab Emirates has started to quietly permeate Philippine commerce. Non-oil trade between the two countries doubled from $830 million in 2021 to $1.85 billion in 2022, as reported by the UAE Embassy in Manila. By 2022, the United Arab Emirates was among the top 20 trading partners of the Philippines, and both sides are negotiating a comprehensive economic partnership agreement to to further boost trade and investments. Emirati businesses have shown interest in Philippine sectors like renewable energy, logistics, and retail. One notable move: in 2023, Abu Dhabi's state-owned AI and tech firms explored partnerships in Manila's emerging tech scene, as part of the UAE's broader $10 billion investment push in Southeast Asia, according to officials in May 2023. The countries also signed an investment promotion and protection agreement in 2022, laying legal groundwork for more Emirati capital to flow in. High-level visits underscore this blossoming relationship. President Marcos Jr. met UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed in mid-2022 and again in 2023 on the sidelines of summits, discussing renewable energy and infrastructure investments. The Philippines Sovereign Wealth Fund Initiative, Maharlika, has even courted Abu Dhabi and Dubai investors, with Marcos personally inviting UAE sovereign wealth funds to participate. Reuters, January 17, 2023. In diplomacy, the UAE has been a valuable partner during crises, donating COVID-19 vaccines and humanitarian aid after Philippine typhoons. For example, the UAE sent tons of relief goods after Typhoon Odette in 2021, per the UAE's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The influence extends to culture. Glitzy Dubai has become a second home for many Filipino celebrities and influencers, and UAE's airlines, Emirates Etihad, connect Manila to the world. All told, the UAE's presence is felt not through force, but through finance, jobs, and goodwill, an invisible invasion enriching both nations. As one UAE diplomat quipped in 2022, the Filipino community is integral to the UAE's society and economy. Khalij Times, February 2022, cementing a bond that grows stronger each year. Country 7, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's hold on the Philippines is quiet but profound, built on jobs, oil, and a shared history of migration. The kingdom has long been the #1 destination for overseas Filipino workers, OFWs, a status it maintained into the 2020s. Over 700,000 Filipinos live in Saudi Arabia as of 2022, making it the largest Filipino diaspora community anywhere in the world. These workers, engineers, nurses, construction laborers, domestic helpers, remitted about $1.8 to $2.5 billion annually in recent years. Philippine Central Bank data, 2021 to 2023. More than 700,000 Filipinos live in Saudi Arabia. The kingdom is the most popular destination for overseas Filipino workers, reported Arab News, noting the UAE and Kuwait rank next. This huge labor exchange gives Riyadh significant economic leverage. The Philippine economy, especially rural households, quietly depends on remittances from Saudi. Any change in Saudi labor policy sends ripples to Manila, a power dynamic not lost on either side. In the past 5 years, Saudi Arabia has wielded this influence benevolently at times. A striking example came in November 2022, when President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. met Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, at the APEC summit. MBS announced a 2 billion Saudi Riyal fund, about $532 million, to compensate some 10,000 Filipino workers whose Saudi employers went bankrupt and left them unpaid back in 2015 to 2016. He said this was his gift, Marcos remarked, expressing gratitude for the long-awaited settlement. The Philippine government lauded the pledge as a sign that Saudi-Philippine relations are getting better now. Indeed, Riyadh's gesture followed Manila's decision to lift a deployment ban and resume sending OFWs to Saudi that same month, illustrating a diplomatic give-and-take. Saudi Arabia also supplies over a third of the Philippines' crude oil imports, DOE data 2020 to 2021, quietly powering Philippine transport and industries. Meanwhile, security and diplomacy ties have warmed. In April 2021, then Philippine Foreign Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. secured Saudi support for Philippine positions in the G20 and on Middle East peace, according to the DFA. And in 2023, Saudi Arabia for the first time invited a Philippine contingent to observe military exercises in the Gulf, signaling burgeoning defense rapport. Culturally, the influence is less visible but present. The Philippines' large Muslim community, about 6% of the population, regards Saudi Arabia as the custodian of Islam's holy sites, and thousands of Filipinos go on Hajj pilgrimage each year under Saudi's care. Neutrality is key. Saudi doesn't overtly meddle in Philippine politics, but its quiet control comes from the reality that hundreds of thousands of Filipino livelihoods depend on the kingdom's labor market. As one Filipino labor official noted in 2023, Saudi Arabia remains our top choice for workers abroad. This enduring, peaceful invasion via labor and oil gives Riyadh a unique, if understated, sway over the Philippines' economic and social stability. Country 6. Singapore. Tiny Singapore has an outsized, if quiet, presence in the Philippine economy, like a financial ghost working behind the scenes. In recent years, Singapore has repeatedly topped the list of sources of foreign investment into the Philippines. In 2022, for instance, Singapore accounted for 54% of all approved foreign investment pledges, the largest of any country. That year, investment commitments from Singapore reached 130.6 billion pesos, $2.5 billion, up 63% from 2021. The Philippine Statistics Authority data underscored Singapore's role as a major capital funnel into Philippine industries, from real estate and telecommunications to startups. Notably, Singapore is a leading source of foreign direct investments, injecting more than $761 million to the Philippines in 2021, a Philippine central bank brief observed. How does Singapore, a nation of 5.5 million, quietly take over portions of the Philippine economy? Largely through its position as a gateway for multinational companies and regional capital. Many foreign firms channel investments via Singaporean subsidiaries, so the city-state shows up as the investor of record. Singapore's influence isn't just on paper. Take technology and telecoms. In 2019, Singapore's sovereign wealth fund, GIC, purchased a substantial stake in Ayala Corporation's energy unit, pouring money into Philippine renewable projects. Business World, November 2019. Singapore-based tech companies have acquired or funded Filipino startups in e-commerce and fintech. Even one of the Philippines' telecom giants, Globe Telecom, counts Singapore Telecom, Singtel, as a long-time strategic shareholder, holding approximately 20% equity. These financial links mean Philippine businesses often look to Singapore for partnerships and capital. In trade, Singapore is an important neighbor. It was the Philippines' fifth largest trading partner in 2022, per DTI data, with two-way trade above $10 billion, including electronics, petrochemicals, and food products. Both countries are part of ASEAN's single market, which helps Singaporean brands quietly permeate Filipino daily life, from Bread Talk bakeries in Manila to Singapore's OCBC bank financing projects. Diplomatically, Singapore and the Philippines maintain a low-key but cooperative relationship. Singapore's Prime Minister, Lee Hsien Loong, hosted President Marcos Jr. in September 2022, resulting in agreements on counter-terrorism and data privacy. Culturally, the ties are subtle. There's a small Filipino expat community in Singapore. 200,000 Filipinos work and live there, and affluent Filipinos often travel to the Lion City for business, education, or medical care. Knowledge exchange is significant. E.g., the Singapore-based Temasek Foundation funds training programs for Filipino officials, and thousands of Filipino students have attended Singaporean universities on scholarships. In the words of a former Philippine trade secretary, Singapore has been a gateway for the Philippines to the world, a source of investments, a hub for air travel, and a model for efficient governance. Interview with the Diplomat, July 2021. This gateway role is precisely how Singapore's invisible hand guides parts of Philippine progress. No armies needed, just capital flows, corporate ties, and quiet diplomacy. Country 5. South Korea. The Republic of Korea's influence in the Philippines is a powerhouse of pop culture, people, and partnerships. In the last 5 years, the Korean wave, Hallyu, has swept the Filipino youth off their feet. According to Twitter data released in January 2022, the Philippines ranked third worldwide in K-pop fandom size, behind only Indonesia and Japan. In 2021, Filipino Twitter users sent tens of millions of tweets about K-pop, with global superstars BTS being the most tweeted about artist in the Philippines. Korean telenovelas air in prime time, and Korean BBQ restaurants and K-beauty shops dot Metro Manila streets. This cultural affinity translates into soft power. South Korea has won the hearts of many Filipinos, quietly shaping tastes and attitudes. The Korean Cultural Center in the Philippines notes that interest in learning the Korean language and studying in Korea has surged. KCC Press Release 2021, fostering deeper ties for the future. But South Korea's invisible invasion isn't only pop culture, it's also planes, ports, and people on the ground. Before the pandemic, South Koreans were the #1 tourists to the Philippines every single year for a decade. In 2019, nearly 1.99 million South Koreans visited, 24% of all foreign arrivals, from golfers in Cebu to shoppers in Manila. Thousands of Koreans have also made the Philippines their second home. As students learning English, the Philippines is a favored destination for affordable English immersion, or retirees enjoying the warm climate. At one point in the late 2000s and 10s, over 90,000 South Koreans were residing in the Philippines. Korean MOFA data, 2019, comprising the largest foreign community in some cities. These interactions generate billions in local revenue and innumerable personal friendships, quietly knitting the two societies together. Economically, South Korea has ramped up investments and official development assistance. In November 2022, Seoul opened a $3 billion credit line for Philippine infrastructure projects from 2022 to 2026. Korean contractors are building major projects like the Metro Manila Subway, Phase 1, and the Panguil Bay Bridge in Mindanao, funded by Korean ODA loans. The Laguna Lakeshore Road Network, a $1 billion mega-project to decongest Manila's traffic, is being financed by the Export-Import Bank of Korea. On the defense front, South Korea has become a crucial supplier of military hardware without raising geopolitical alarms. The Philippine Air Force flies 12 FA-50 light fighter jets made in Korea, with discussions for additional units ongoing in 2023, and the Navy's 2 brand-new frigates, BRP Jose Rizal and BRP Antonio Luna, were built by Hyundai Heavy Industries and delivered in 2020 and 2021. Such deals come with training and technology transfers that deepen military ties. Diplomatic cooperation is strong as well. The two countries marked 70 years of relations in 2019, and South Korea has been supportive of the Philippines' positions in regional forums. President Marcos Jr. and President Yoon Suk Yeol met in 2022 and 2023, agreeing to boost cooperation in everything from maritime security to climate change. Yonhap News, September 2022. Perhaps nothing encapsulates South Korea's sway more than a simple fact. Filipinos now consume more kimchi and K-dramas than ever, even as Korean firms build their roads, and Korean tourists bolster local economies. It's an all-encompassing soft power embrace. No coercion, just irresistible cultural appeal and mutually beneficial partnerships. Country 4. Japan. Japan's presence in the Philippines is deep, long-standing, and largely welcomed, a story of friendship, aid, and economic might rather than force. In the last 5 years, Japan has solidified its role as the top infrastructure partner for the Philippines. Travel around Metro Manila and you'll spot Japan's fingerprints everywhere. The ongoing construction of the Metro Manila subway, a 357 billion peso project, largely funded by Japan's Official Development Assistance, ODA. The North-South Commuter Railway, financed by JICA and the Asian Development Bank. And the recently opened Binondo Intramuros Bridge, a graceful span over the Pasig River built with Japanese engineering, inaugurated in 2022. Japan is by far the Philippines' largest bilateral aid donor, providing $12.3 billion in ODA loans and grants from 2016 to 2022, Nikkei Asia, May 2022. It has committed funds for at least 14 big-ticket Philippine projects, more than any other country. In February 2023, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. visited Tokyo and secured 600 billion yen, around $4.5 billion, in investment pledges and loans. This included $13 billion in private investment commitments and $3 billion in infrastructure loans, spanning agriculture, healthcare, digital tech, and energy. The summit also yielded a landmark. Manila and Tokyo agreed to start talks on a reciprocal access agreement to allow their troops to visit each other's country for training, a move unthinkable a decade ago. Japanese officials speak diplomatically but candidly about their aims. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said during a Manila visit on November 3, 2023, that Japan and the Philippines share concern over unacceptable attempts to unilaterally change the status quo by force, a veiled reference to Chinese activities, and announced the start of talks for a troop access pact. President Marcos Jr. welcomed this, noting he is cognizant of the benefits such an agreement would bring for regional peace and stability. Already, Japan has given the Philippines radar systems, Coast Guard vessels, and aircraft to boost maritime security. In December 2024, Tokyo provided a 1.6 billion yen $11 million security aid package, including coast surveillance radars and inflatable boats for the Philippine Navy. The strengthened security cooperation reflects Japan and the Philippines' shared commitment to regional peace and stability, the Philippine Department of National Defense said in a statement. On the cultural front, Japan's influence is less of a wave and more of a steady tide. Anime and manga have a loyal following in the Philippines, Japanese food is perennially popular, and decades of exchange programs have produced many Japan-educated Filipino professionals. More than 300,000 Filipinos work and reside in Japan, including nurses under Japan's EPS program and skilled workers under new visa categories, strengthening interpersonal links. Trade remains robust. Japan is either the Philippines' first or second largest trading partner each year. Total trade was about $21 billion in 2022. Japanese companies like Toyota, Mitsubishi, and Sumitomo are household names in the Philippines, quietly dominating sectors like automotive, electronics, and finance, where the Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi UFJ holds a 20% stake in Security Bank. Through all these avenues, Japan has effectively taken over as the Philippines' builder and benefactor. It's an invisible invasion welcomed with open arms, summed up by a Japanese diplomat's quote in 2021. When Japan helps build a subway or donate a patrol boat, we are not only constructing infrastructure, we are building trust. Reuters, February 2021. That trust is the bedrock of Japan's far-reaching, peaceful influence. Country 3. United States. The United States' presence in the Philippines is anything but new. It's a century-old relationship. Yet in the past 5 years, Washington has reasserted its quiet dominance in fresh ways. Militarily, the U.S.-Philippines alliance is surging back to life. In 2023, the two nations held their largest ever joint military exercise, Balikatan 2023, with 17,600 troops, including 12,000 Americans, simulating island defense and live fire drills. This is officially the largest Balikatan exercise, said Philippine Colonel Michael Logico, highlighting the improved ties under President Marcos Jr. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, visiting Manila in February 2023, hailed the alliance. Our alliance makes both of our democracies more secure and helps uphold a free and open Indo-Pacific, Austin said on February 2023. On that trip, Austin and Philippine officials agreed to expand U.S. access to Philippine military bases, adding 4 new locations under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA. The U.S. now can rotate troops through a total of 9 Philippine bases, strategically located near the South China Sea and Taiwan. This revival comes after a rocky period. In 2020, Duterte moved to terminate the Visiting Forces Agreement, only to restore it in July 2021 as U.S. COVID-19 vaccine donations poured in. Duterte admitted in August 2021 that he made a concession, the continuance of the VFA, in gratitude for 3 million U.S. donated vaccines. By 2023, under Marcos, the alliance was firmly back on track, with over 300 joint activities a year and U.S. ship visits becoming routine. The Pentagon even pledged $100 million to help Manila cancel a Russian helicopter deal and buy U.S. helicopters instead, underscoring U.S. sway in Philippine defense decisions. Economically, the U.S. remains a heavyweight in a less flashy way. It is the Philippines' third-largest trading partner. Total trade was $22.7 billion in 2022 per U.S. Census data, and one of its top investors. American companies drive the booming Filipino BPO industry, with firms like Concentrix and J.P. Morgan employing hundreds of thousands of Filipinos in call centers and IT services. The American Chamber of Commerce in Manila notes U.S. businesses have invested over $5 billion in the Philippines from 2014 to 2023 in sectors from energy to consumer goods. Culturally, the American imprint is visible in the widespread use of English, the legal system, and of course, entertainment. Hollywood films and NBA basketball are near religions in the Philippines. This cultural affinity gives the U.S. a form of soft power that's deeply ingrained. Filipino elites often study in U.S. universities. Over 4 million Filipino Americans reside in the U.S., creating a bridge of family ties and remittances. The U.S. is the largest source of remittances, sending about $12.7 billion to the Philippines in 2022, central bank data shows. Recent U.S. efforts have also focused on development aid and pandemic support. The U.S. donated 33 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines to the Philippines by mid-2022 and provided over $50 million in pandemic assistance, U.S. State Department, August 2022. A health lifeline that resonated with ordinary Filipinos. USAID continues to fund programs in education, environmental protection, and disaster management across the archipelago. Perhaps most symbolically, in 2021, a U.S. Coast Guard cutter previously decommissioned was transferred to the Philippine Navy and recommissioned as BRP Melcora Aquino, patrolling Philippine waters with an American pedigree. Through treaties, trade, and people, America's influence permeates Filipino life. As Austin said in Manila, "Our alliance helps uphold a free and open Indo-Pacific." A pointed reminder that the U.S. sees the Philippines as a key ally in a contested region. The invisible invasion here is one of loyalty and legacy. The U.S. never really left, and now it's back in full force, quietly anchoring the Philippines to its side without war, but with plenty of subtle power. Country 2. China. China's rise as a dominant influence in the Philippines has been swift, strategic, and at times shadowy. Over the past 5 years, Beijing has pursued a dual track, offering big-ticket economic deals while quietly pressing its claims in the West Philippine Sea. Economically, China promised a build, build, build bonanza. When President Duterte pivoted to Beijing, China pledged about $24 billion in investments and loans in 2016. By 2021, however, many of these projects lagged. Bloomberg reported that out of 14 China-funded infrastructure projects in the pipeline, only 3 were under construction by mid-2021. Still, a few visible symbols rose. China provided financing and contractors for bridges like the Binondo Intramuros Bridge and an irrigation dam project, and Chinese state firms have bid on Philippine railways. In January 2023, China recharged its charm offensive when President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. visited Beijing. Chinese investors committed $22.8 billion in new investment pledges during that visit, targeting renewable energy, electric vehicles, and agribusiness. "I assure you that our government is committed to support your business activities," Marcos told Chinese executives on January 5, 2023. According to the Philippine press secretary, the pledges included $13.8 billion for solar and wind projects and $7.3 billion for strategic industries. These figures, if realized, would make China one of the Philippines' top foreign investors by far. China's economic sway goes beyond formal pledges. Chinese businesses have quietly established a foothold through the controversial POGO industry, Philippine offshore gaming operators, which at its peak around 2019 employed over 300,000 Chinese workers in Manila. These online casinos, catering to gamblers in China, where gambling is illegal, brought in waves of mainland Chinese staff and cash. At their peak, POGOs employed more than 300,000 Chinese workers, a Reuters report noted. This influx affected local real estate, office rents surged, luxury condos were snapped up, and even crime, prompting a 2022 crackdown that deported thousands of illegal workers. Even after the purge, China's imprint remained via legitimate businesses, from e-commerce giants like Alibaba investing in Filipino tech startups to telecom equipment. Notably, China Telecom owns 40% of Dito Telecommunity, the Philippines' third-largest telecom operator, launched in 2021. This stake gave a Chinese state-run firm a direct role in Philippine communications. While some lawmakers voiced concern that Dito could be a Trojan horse for spying, the Philippine military downplayed the risk. "We don't see any security threat. It is very low," Armed Forces Chief General Gilbert Gapay said in October 2020, as Dito was allowed to install equipment on military bases. That illustrates how Beijing has entwined itself in the Philippines' tech and infrastructure under the banner of business. Diplomatically, China projects both sweetness and assertiveness. It donated millions of COVID-19 vaccines, Sinovac, in early 2021 and offered infrastructure grants. A Philippine-China Joint Commission meets regularly to discuss trade and investment opportunities. In public, Chinese officials emphasize win-win cooperation. We agreed that maritime issues do not comprise the entirety of our relations, President Marcos Jr. said after meeting President Xi Jinping in Beijing. Reuters, January 5, 2023. Behind the scenes, however, China's maritime incursions into Philippine-claimed waters continue, an area beyond our scope of non-war influence, yet impossible to ignore as context. Chinese Coast Guard and militia vessels maintain a steady presence around Philippine Isles in the South China Sea, exerting de facto control. This has a psychological impact on Filipino policymakers and fishermen, nudging the Philippines at times to tread softly with Beijing. The invisible invasion by China is thus two-pronged: economic enticement and ambient pressure. On one hand, Chinese capital builds roads and provides jobs. On the other, Chinese ships linger just beyond the horizon. The result is that China has embedded itself in the Philippines' future plans. Even as Manila revives its U.S. alliance, it cannot decouple from Beijing's orbit. As of 2023, China is the Philippines' largest trading partner, with bilateral trade exceeding $38 billion, China customs data. It is the top import source, filling Filipino shops with Chinese goods from electronics to machinery, and a growing market for Philippine bananas, coconuts, and nickel. In short, China's economic gravity is unavoidable, pulling the Philippines in, quietly but powerfully, without any declaration of war. Number 1. The invisible invasion and what it means. From the K-pop concerts that capture Filipino hearts, to the bridges and railways rising with foreign logos, the Philippines is experiencing a transformation driven by external hands. These 10 countries, each with their distinct mode of taking over, collectively form an invisible invasion, a takeover not of territory, but of influence. None of this has involved armies or coercion. Instead, it's come via investment deals, cultural exports, education and migration, and strategic friendships. We've seen how Japan and China compete by funding big infrastructure, how the US and Australia fortify defense partnerships, how South Korea and the UAE shape society through pop culture and diaspora, and how even Russia, Singapore, and Saudi Arabia leverage their niches, be it arms deals, finance, or labor demand, to gain sway. Importantly, the Philippines is not a passive victim in this story. Its leaders and people engage these influences to fuel development, create jobs, and enhance security. The challenge lies in managing this influx so that it truly benefits the nation and does not erode its sovereignty or national interests. As international viewers aged 35 and above, you've witnessed how the world's powers and players are quietly redrawing the Philippines' fate. It is a sober reminder that in our globalized era, a country can be taken over without a single shot fired, through soft power and economic might. The Philippine case is a microcosm of the broader Indo-Pacific contest, where infrastructure loans and Netflix dramas are as much tools of influence as bases and battleships. Neutrality is key in understanding this. No country in our list is purely villain or hero. Each offers opportunities even as it pursues its own interests. The invisible invasion carries both promise and peril for the Philippines, prosperity and connectivity on one hand, dependency and undue influence on the other. The ending to this story is yet to be written. Will the Philippines harness these foreign engagements to uplift its people on its own terms? Or will it be pulled in one direction too far? Time will tell. Thank you for watching our deep dive documentary. If you found this illuminating, please subscribe to our channel for more intelligent, in-depth analyses. We encourage you to join the conversation. Drop a comment below on which country's influence surprised you the most, or how you think the Philippines should navigate these relationships. Don't forget to like and share this video to spark discussion on the subtle ways power works in our world. Together, let's stay curious and informed about the forces shaping our societies, often unseen, but ever present.